This is from the cow in the little container, milk direct that's not been homogenized or pasteurized.
Right. And so people understand pasteurization. That's just like heating, to a boiling point, and you cook off stuff. So my grandma always put a pot on the back of the stove, just at a very low temperature, and that's the milk that would then be skimmed off, and you'd get you had your cheesecloth, and you get your buttermilk and other stuff, and then the finished product is what you would drink, and nobody died. But again, there's no money in that, right? So they had to have something they can regulate and inspect and have a job, and then force you to buy that product because they make it illegal to buy the other product.
Before we get started, I want to tell a personal story about my mom and Lifeline screening. You may have heard me talk about my mom's peripheral arterial disease diagnosis about 5-10 years ago. And I wanted to let you guys know how we found out about it. She's not a doctor-y kind of girl, and she has white coat syndrome. So it was very challenging for us to get her tested for different cardiac issues. So I got a postcard in the mail about Lifeline screening, and I went ahead and contacted them and brought her to basically like a pop-up, which was at a church, a local church. And she went in, and it was very quick and easy. She didn't seem to be super nervous about it. There were a lot of people milling around, and they found the peripheral arterial disease, sent us a report. We went to the cardiologist, started using diet and nutrition and exercise therapy to treat it. And I've since gone to the Lifeline screenings myself, as well as my other family members, because it was super cost effective, keeping us from having to pay multiple copays and travel time and things like that. So Lifeline screening is offering 5 preventive health screenings for a special price for my audience of $149. The package includes a carotid artery screening, abdominal aortic aneurysm screening, atrial fibrillation, which is also called AFib screening, peripheral arterial disease, PAD, which is what my mom was screened for, and osteoporosis screening. In addition, you can add other options like liver and kidney function and the A1C marker, which is for diabetes. So I can't encourage you enough to check it out. It's well worth it. It's going to save you a lot of time. It's painless. And you can click on my show notes in order to get the offer for $149, or you can call 844-558-0996 to schedule your appointment. That's 844-558-0996. Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Modern Healer's Journey. This is Tammy Bennett, Doctor of Oriental Medicine, and I am really excited to have my guest on today. He is a radio show host at Florida Man Radio. He's also a local farmer with Morganic Meats. This is Jonathan Morris, and tell us who you are and what you do. I'll let you do that.
All right. I'm Jonathan Morris. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I am brand new to the radio business, and we're talking on the first laptop I've ever owned in my life, and I just got this like a week ago. So I'm a 4th-generation farmer. My great-grandparents are out of Ohio. My father moved to Florida back in the 50s, late 50s, early 60s. I grew up on a sugarcane plantation down in a town called Pahokee, down south of Lake Okeechobee, if anybody's familiar with South Florida. And, you just grew up a normal life, and as I became an adult, got married, started farming on my own, and we moved to Central Florida in 2007. We opened a butcher shop 2.5 years ago, like a brick and mortar store. We used to only do delivery to your house or farmers markets. So we raise cows, pigs, lambs, a little bit of chickens, grow a lot of vegetables, and we also work with a lot of other farmers to kind of complete the circle. Because the way we do it, and with seasons, God made seasons, not me. So people get mad sometimes. They're like, "Oh, I can't get strawberries." I'm like, "Well, it's not strawberry season yet." Like right now we're in strawberry season, but they'll come in the middle of August and they want strawberries. Well, we don't have them. So we work with a lot of other farmers. We farm from all the way down to Homestead to up in Georgia, and I have a cousin who's still on our original property that my great grandparents had in Wyandotte, Ohio. So got a lot of places to put it all together to make it all work.
Okay, so tell me about the idea behind healthy eating now versus before. So when I first started doing what I was doing with nutritional therapy, it was 25 years ago, and there were people that wanted certain things like raw milk or raw yogurt or Amish butter or certain things that they couldn't get at regular stores. Whole Foods wasn't really rocking and rolling back then. So tell me about how things were and what things are happening now, because I know, for me anyway, a lot of people ask me about grass-fed food, grass-fed beef,
Right.
heritage pork, pastured chicken, pastured eggs. So give me the skinny on that.
So I'll tell people, and I'll talk to you in private about this already. We are the reality farmers. So you see the big media push and the big marketing push behind, certified organic and grass-fed, grass-finished, and GMO this and GMO that, and pasture this and pasture that. Those are all good words in theory, but if you take them out of context, they don't mean anything. So if you have a certified organic farm, for instance, and you can Google this or look it up, whatever you use, the USDA doesn't really lie about anything. They put it all on their website. So, for instance, the organic deal on a commercial level, depending on how many acres you're farming, how big your farm is, you get so many allotments per crop. So let's say you're a really big farm, you're farming 100,000 acres, so you'll get 5 allotments based on your size. Well, green beans grow in 62 days. So if you get 5 allotments and you spray every 7 days, you pretty much spray the green beans the entire crop. But because you have an allotment, you get to keep your certified organic label. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And they're not required by law to put on that package of green beans that we sprayed this way. Or if you go down and get your organic Cheerios, and the wheat farmer has an allotment and he had to spray for blight or whatever, they're not obligated to put on the Cheerio box, we sprayed this box of Cheerios. They still put certified organic. So unless you know your farmer and you know where your food's coming from, and you have a trust system and a relationship, you're just wasting your money because you really don't know. And at the end of the day, commercial farming is all about profit. If they are not making any money, they're not farming, right? So that's kind of like on the organic phrase. On the grass-fed, grass-finished phrase, that leaves out the middle. So they tell you grass-fed, grass-finished, and you assume, oh, they're letting me know the cow started on grass and finished on grass. So as a normal person that just is buying off of labels and pretty pictures, you have this warm, fuzzy feeling inside. But what you don't understand is the 100 days they don't tell you about when that cow went to a box stall and it was force-fed, brood grain or GMO corn or whatever to get it up to market weight. And then they take it from that box stall back to a pasture, and legally it started on grass and finished on grass. And you assume you're feeding grass-fed meat to your family. And this is where the problem lies. So now you come down to a local farmer's market, and you meet a farmer that's really raising cows on grass, and you buy it, and then you tell everybody that's the worst cow I ever had. That guy's no good. He sells junk. That's the worst cow I ever had. Because you've never really eaten grass-fed, grass-finished beef. You think you are, but you're not.
Right.
And I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but it's all like the rest of the world going on right now. Food is very political, and there's an agenda to it. Right. So you need to be smart. You need to understand, what you're getting, how you're getting it. So you take care of your family.
So that answers my grass-fed question. You mentioned GMO. Let's go down the GMO highway for a second. So, okay. GMO, in my mind and in the mind of my clients who I see on a daily basis, that would be a cancer-causing agent that has been basically a modification that has happened to corn based on the spraying of Roundup. Am I right?
But it's not just Roundup. Everybody jumps on Roundup, because the Roundup ready corn. And that's all they focus on. But there's also DT, ready corn. And there's other things that have like a blight and a fungicide into it. So what they did, we farm with OP or HY, which is open pollinated or hybrid. Open pollinated seed, and people need to understand this. So people talk about GMO, but they don't understand that 80% of the stuff in the grocery store is GMO. They don't even understand the stance they're taking and how to avoid not buying a GMO product. For instance, a funny story. We'll have people come to the farmer's market and they argue with me about seasonal crops. And then they inform me that they only eat from Whole Foods and they only eat organic and they only eat local and they're holding a seedless watermelon and red seedless grapes. And I tell them, you're holding 2 GMO products. And they're like, no, that's different. I'm like, no, it's not different. God didn't make anything without seeds. You have to have a man and a woman, no matter if it's vegetables, animals, people. You can't have a seedless product and have reproduction. It doesn't work that way. So people have this weird misconception of what they think GMO is, and all they focus on is Roundup Ready corn, Roundup Ready corn, Roundup Ready corn. They don't understand the broad spectrum of how it affects the entire market. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So HY is a hybrid, and that's where like an old farmer will take 2 rows of something, and one of them, let's say we're talking about corn. So one of them is a really big ear, but it has no flavor, it's terrible. The other is a really small ear, but it's really, really sweet. So he'll plant those next to each other, and hopefully when the wind blows, they'll cross-pollinate. And then you'll come up with a hybrid, which is natural. It naturally kind of evolve. And then hopefully that corn will be medium with good flavor. So there's nothing wrong with that because that happens in the field by strategic planting, and you didn't affect the way the crop grows. The problem with GMO is just like this, the so-called vaccine. It's not really a vaccine. They're manipulating the plant. So now the plant, because by the way God designed it by nature, the plant has to survive, right? Nature over nurture. Nature always wins. So now that you've altered the plant doesn't have the same life skills that it had when God made it. So now the plant has to do different things to survive. Thus, you hear these stories about super weeds and super this and, cancer, because the corn starts to mutate because the corn don't understand why is this product in me? It's not supposed to be in me because it was placed there,
right?
By modification. So that's where you get into all these health problems. So corn by nature is not bad for you, but GMO corn or GMO onions or GMO rice or GMO grain is very bad for you because your body doesn't know how to process.
Is there really a non-GMO product now? Is there truly such a thing as a non-GMO now?
Yes, but you have to pay out the butt to get it. I go to a certain meal. It's a meal where they grind, and he gets a rail car every week. It's a buddy of mine named Daryl. I paid probably 3 times the market price for old-fashioned, open-pollinated corn and different grains that we use to feed our animals because I don't believe in 100% grass. And we talked about this before. If you go back to Ecclesiastes in the Bible, God tells you how to eat. So, Solomon tells you about how to eat. He talks about the animals out in the pasture, the animals in the mountain, the animals in the barn. And when everything has a balance to it, there's nothing wrong with it. So when you take, let's for instance, on our farm, every once in a while I'll get a call from a customer and they'll say, hey, I really love your stuff, but can you take one animal, kind of separate it, and make sure it never eats out of the feed program? Okay, no problem. And then they come back and they say, wow, I never want another animal like that. Please feed the next one a little bit. So we use an open-pollinated, clean feed. And it's free choice. It's not force-fed. I have like 10 cows on 20 acres. And then we also put out big rolls of hay and all the fresh water they want, shade and just grazing area. So they eat, graze all day long. And in the evening, when it's cool, we put out a couple buckets of feed. They come over, they eat what they want, and then they go back. And then when you come to our store, you see a product that looks appealing to your eye. It has a little bit of marble, a little bit of fat content. And the first thing people notice, and they question us, is why is your meat darker than the meat in the grocery store? And why is your fat more yellow and not so bleached look? And that's because our animals get more grass and hazy grass than anything else. When they get enough of a balanced diet with vitamins and nutrients, then it's a really good animal.
Gotcha. Okay. Tell me what factory farming means to you. It's kind of a big controversial subject now about factory farming being a bad thing, and what's that mean to you?
So, so first of all, if anybody answers it like scattered brain, we'll rein them in later. Been up since 1:30 working and loading trucks and pigs and whatnot. But people have to understand the reality of the world we live in. And I'm going to say something that's going to shock your audience, okay? I don't hate Monsanto. Because what Monsanto does, it's almost like something out of the Bible, you hate the sin, not the sinner, What Monsanto does, it was almost forced upon them. So let's just say Morris, right? Let's change Monsanto to Morris. If the federal government would have came to my great-grandpa 90 years ago and said, hey, we're going to give you this many millions of acres of land, tax-free for your family to build something for your family, there's only one requirement. Never run out of food. What sounds pretty easy 100 years ago But now that we got 330, however many, I don't know the population, but however many people we have, and they're still required by their federal contract to produce food for that many people, it creates an evil, right? It distorts farming because now whoever the Monsanto family is, and I don't know them by name, right? They have an obligation to their family, their employees, all that. So I'm not saying what they're doing is right. Please don't take me out of context. But the evil was created, okay? And now you can't do anything about it. So that being said, when you're charged with feeding the population, or you have to go overseas to other countries and buy food out of your pocket to ship to America to feed the population, you have to figure out how to cheat because you can no longer feed the population. It's just too many people, right? Okay. So what they do is a necessary evil for them. The bad aspect or the bad, I don't know the right word for it, but it trickles down to us, the American people, that everything we consume now is not the food that God made. Now it's a genetically altered whatever it is, and our bodies, and that's the problem with food. People are like, oh, I'm a vegetarian, oh, I'm this, or I only eat this, or I only eat that. I can't lose weight, I can't get healthy, my thyroid's out of order. Well, it's not the food, it's what's in the food. Okay? Now we're talking about factory farming.
Right. So
in order to be a factory farm and hit your numbers and hit your margins, you have to cheat. You can no longer do it right. There's no such thing as a large-scale factory farm that is morally and ethically correct. It's just impossible. Now, you scale it down to where you're just feeding your community, and they're willing to pay 10 or 15 or 20% more for a product because they know you grew it with your hands and they trust you and they know what you did with it. Now you can make enough money to survive. You're not buying boats and going on retirement, right? Yes. Because of the margins.
So I want to comment on something. So I'm a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and right. The very foundation of old school Chinese medicine is food. And yes. Everything that I learned about food was eat in season, eat in moderation, eat local, and eat according to your pattern. So the idea about that is that which happens in nature happens inside our body. You can be too dry. You can be too wet. You can be too windy. You could be too cold. You could be too hot.
Yes.
That concept has been bastardized because of the fact that modern food, as you said, is not really as nutritionally dense or based as it used to be.
Right.
And so how do we as consumers who want to be healthy, who want to eat properly, other than working local and supporting local and working with someone like yourself that has the interest of the person at heart, what else can be done? Do you have any other insights for us?
Yes, there's only one. Learn how to grow your own food. Listen, the two best worst things that happen to our country. All right, I'm going to cover this tomorrow on the radio, maybe on Wednesday, because I'm doing best things until over the weekend. But the two best things that ever happened to our country was the Industrial Revolution, all right, and NAFTA. All right, everything else goes out the window. The Industrial Revolution took people off their farms, brought them into the cities, created all these jobs in manufacturing and production. And prior to the Industrial Revolution, 95% of the people in America had their own garden plots, had at least one beef cow or one milk cow, had a couple pigs, had at least 10 or 12 chickens, because everybody lived outside of the city limits on what you would call a rural piece of property. Now, two things came out of the Industrial Revolution: mass-produced food and women's lib. And I tell people this all the time. The only reason we have women's lib is because men fell to women. If men had not gone into the city and started becoming drunken bastards and having sex with the secretaries and drinking at the pool halls and the bars all night and left their women at home to take care of the children and do everything else, women would have never felt less than, and because the family unit used to be a complete circle, right? And then it got broken. NAFTA, under Bill Clinton, created free trade for the world, supposedly to make it better for the consumer. But we grew up on a sugar plantation. It takes an American farmer, and this is back in the 90s. I don't know what it takes today. In the 90s, it took an American farmer 18 cents to produce sugar. Mexican farmers, because of lack of regulation, can produce it for 6 cents. So under Bill Clinton, the federal government created NAFTA. They started subsidizing the American farmer to match the Mexican market. Sounds great. Until the government runs out of money, they quit subsidizing, and sugar farms start closing down. And then they start putting these loophole laws in where, like, people like Coca-Cola and Hershey, all them, as long as they have a factory within like 7 miles of the border, they still can be a trademark American company. So you start having it with sugar. I'm using sugar for an example. You start having it with sugar, and then the beef farmers say, well, wait a minute. We can put a beef slaughterhouse 7 miles from the border. We can bring cows in from Honduras, Nicaragua, wherever. There's no regulation. We'll kill them, ship them over to the country, and then they're American beef. So you go to the local market. It don't matter if it's Publix, Aldi's, Walmart. It don't matter where you go. Just because it says USA on it does not mean that's where that animal was raised at. That means where the seal was broken. You know, Nancy Pelosi, the lady that should have retired 100 years ago, when we were having all these problems a couple years ago, instead of them dealing with the problems, the House was enacting the origin of labor laws. And the origin of labor laws, because of discrimination, does away where the animal was raised at. The only thing it provides the consumer is where the seal was broken at. So they get a big old box of beef, and they bring it into Texas. They break the seal on it. The guy standing there stamps it USA. That's where the seal was broken. You have no idea where the cow came from or the pig came from. So the food we know today is not the food our grandparents did.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, let me go back to the grow your own food piece of it.
All right.
So what do you advise people who have a small piece of property, let's like an acre, right? And they're not in a rural area where they can have animals on it. Do you promote vegetable growth? Just go ahead and just put a bunch of seed in the ground and get some stuff to grow?
I'm gonna shock every American out there because they're gonna be like, "Oh no, I can't eat that." Rabbit is one of the best proteins for you. Build you a little small pen and start having some rabbits. They reproduce at such a rate you'll never run out of food. Start getting a couple chickens. Start with small animals that you can work with, and you're not responsible for a 1,000-pound cow that you don't know what to do with, and then one day it's dead in the yard. You don't know why it died, right? Learn how to produce something on a very small level. Don't disc in. Disc in is like the turning of the soil. So don't disc in or till in your whole acre, and then go out and just spread seed everywhere. And be like, man, I lost $8,000. Now what do I do? Right? Start very small in little bitty plots. Learn how to grow something, and then expand on that. Learn your seasons.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to the theory that the nutrients at the certain levels of the soil throughout the United States have been degraded so much that it's very difficult to actually grow or feed animals based on what we've got to work with now?
So if you're buying in a community that has been built by one of these development companies, your answer is yes. If you're buying a piece of farmland that has been in a huge factory farm for 150 years, your answer is yes. For the Florida people, if you go out to Osteen or Geneva or somewhere in Lake County and you found a piece of wood in an area that no one's messed with, and you take that and start to till it or disc it in, that is what we call virgin soil, and it will grow the best crops you've ever seen in your life. So it all depends on where you're at, where you buy. Thank you. It all depends on where you're at, where you buy. Look at this. It's nice to have people that know computers. They got a new spreadsheet.
Everybody needs to know you're at your shop. You're at your store. It's a
yes,
I'm work day. Yeah.
So what's behind me is the wall to the walk-in cooler. And I don't know if this thing will walk into the cooler, but I can actually go in there and show you like pigs that we just harvested.
Don't do it yet. Don't do it yet. Do it at the end. Because if I lose you, I don't want to lose you.
Well, I don't want to figure anybody out because we've done that before, and people are like, "Oh, I don't want to see that. Just show me a steak or a pork chop." But that's the other problem with America. Okay, this is something the audience has to get past. You have to get past, and this is strategic. It's a strategic planning from the government. Just like that old food chart, you got to have so many grains and cereals and the pyramid. It was made. If you Google the people, not Google. I use Google because that's the word to use. But DuckDuckGo or GoDaddy, you got to use a site that's fair. Google's very left leaning, very liberal. They tell you what they want you to know, And if you want to learn more, you have to go down like 19 searches to find the story you're looking for. But the pyramid was made by people who worked for the grain industry and the dairy industry. So, of course, they promoted products that they could make profit on.
I've heard that before.
But if you go back to, like, I'll reference the Bible a lot. If you go back to Ecclesiastes, we need meat. We need vegetables. And then, a little pasta, a little grain, a little wheat, but that's like the small dishes on the table. In America, we have been displaced from our food, and they do it on purpose. They make everything so bright and red and shiny and pretty, the packages, and you're like, oh, yay. But you have no idea what a chicken looks like or a cow looks like to grow and then slaughter and prepare your own food. So when you're presented with that, there's a lot of people that don't have the stomach for it. They're like, I can never do that. Yeah. I just won't eat. I'll just die.
Yeah.
Because they've done it on purpose. And we'll talk about it later about you enter Bill Gates into the scene and the fake meat product. There's a lot of people that don't have the stomach to harvest their own animal, so they will I'll just do fake meat because I don't want to kill animals.
Let me comment on a couple things. Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
So as far as growing food, people in inner cities have been taking plots of land, teaching inner city kids how to grow vegetables, how to cook responsibly. I really like those programs. I think it's really helpful getting kids to understand where food comes from and how it works. I remember when I was a little kid, I grew up more in a city, but my dad lived in the country. My parents were split up, so I got to see both worlds. I went to a city school. We used to travel to the dairy farms and watch the dairy farms. And then my dad lived in the country, and it would be probably 20 miles of cornfields all the way to my dad's house. And then cattle farms and all kinds of stuff. And then I remember feeling disconnected from it. But as I got older, much more connected to it when I learned about food through the Weston Price Foundation. So my question is, can you give a little bit of advice to someone who lives in a city that's going to try to grow their own food or do something like that? What's your best advice?
Take a little bit of your extra spending money. Instead of going to the movies or going to the beach or whatever, go down to Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever. Buy some garden boards. Build you a raised bed. That way the city can't come and mess with you because you haven't disturbed the soil, you haven't torn up the ground. Build you a couple of raised beds and plant you something very easy to grow, like zucchini or squash or maybe radishes or some type of kale's really easy to grow, believe it or not. But grow you something like that and don't try to take over the world. Understand the seasons. Like I'll have people call me and say, man, I don't know how you do it. Or how I do what? They're like, how do you grow kale right now? I'm like, well, I don't. I'm getting out of Georgia. I thought you were local. I am. But right now, because of seasons, kale's in Georgia and Tennessee. And the farmer that grows up there, he needs our support just like I need your support. Right now, I'm growing yellow squash, zucchini, eggplant, peppers. I can't grow leaf in Florida. It's 95 degrees and the heat index is 110. And it blows people's minds, They don't understand. They're like, hey, I planted all this romaine and it died. Yeah, it's 100 degrees outside. You go stand in the dirt for 10 hours and you'll die too. You know what I mean? So the displacement of food has been so powerful since the Industrial Revolution that really people don't understand. Just a quick story. I went broke in 2007. I used to farm 635 acres in South Florida. They call it a section. And I was doing really good, but I was young. Made $1 million and it was stupid and lost it all. So in 2007, I had about 9 acres of sweet corn left. And my sister lived up here in Central Florida. She's like, come up here and sell corn. They're the guy that sells tomatoes on the side of the road. He does really good on the weekend. So my wife and I are harvesting corn. We're throwing it in the back of our truck. We're harvesting by hand. We come up to Dean Road and Lake Underhill. We're sitting on the side of the road by the red light. And we're just peddling corn on the weekend. At least 1 out of 3 people would roll their window down and yell, hey, what's that? And I'd say, it's corn. They're like, no, man, corn's not green. It's yellow and it's in a pack. And I would be like, really? I was like, this is what it looks like in the field before they shuck it, cut the tips off of it, and put it in that nice little tray pack they sell you for like, $8, $9. And people would come over almost like I was a theme park. They couldn't believe that that's what corn looked like. Yeah, they just didn't understand.
Yeah.
So you have to start understanding food. You've got to understand seasons. Know what to plant, when to plant, how to plant. Every county in Florida has what they call an IFAS program. That's where the University of Florida and the county that you live in team up together. And they have master gardeners, they have tree specialists, cow specialists, pasture specialists, whatever. They have all kinds of different specialists. And they're there for the community. So no matter where you live, you just find your county extension agent. You call them, tell them what you're trying to do, and they have programs for free that'll help anybody get started farming.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
To me, that's your first. Yeah, that's your first.
Yeah.
Route of entry.
Okay. And then if somebody decides if they live more city lifestyle, then if they grow their own vegetables and they're seasonal and they're subscribing to that, they could always go to their farmer's market and try to hook up with a farmer that's got meat, right? If they need protein.
All right. Unfortunately, and I'm not going to name any names. All right. Unfortunately, when we came up in 2007, we started at the Lake Eola Farmers Market. And the day we started, Amy and I came in with our truck from the farm. And there was a guy there that sold lemonade. He was a lemonade guy. And he actually asked us where we got our costumes from. And we were like, what are you talking about? He's like, where'd you get the boots and the dirt and all that stuff from? I was like, what are you talking about? And my wife, Amy, said to the guy, we picked this corn this morning and we drove 3 hours to sell it. He's like, no, nobody in the produce business does that. Everybody buys it from Tampa off the dock at Hillsboro, which is the same stuff going to Winn-Dixie and Aldi's and Walmart and everything else. They just buy it off the back of semis. All stuff that didn't make the grade, and they buy it real cheap. They bring it to the farmer's market, and they put it out. You're like, man, I'm buying from the farmer's market, right? But we don't grow house avocados in Florida. Now, I sell house avocados because people want them. But I tell them, this is California, this is Michigan, this is Chile. Depending on the time of the year, if you want it, great. If you don't, I don't care. We have certain people that want a house avocado year round. But you'll go down to certain farmers markets, and the guy's standing there with a box that says chili on it and says, yeah, I grew these in my backyard. And you're like, yeah, give me 10 of them. And you're too dumb to look at the box and read chili on it. So we found that out when we started farmers markets. We were like, wow. And then we started getting phone calls from other produce people arguing with us about why are you trying to mess up the deal? I'm like, what are you talking about? Stop lying to people. Like, we're not lying to people. We really have a farm and we really have fields and we really pick vegetables and it's just what we do. And we had to argue with several people. And there were people that were like, wow, tell us your address. We're going to come and see your farm. And they did. They drove to our farm and they're like, there's no way you have a farm. Nobody in the farmers market has farms. You know what I mean? And it was so shocking to us.
Right.
And then as farmers markets continued to grow, I guess the word started to spread. A couple of news outlets did some stories on farmer market scams and whatnot. And then it kind of developed people like the Barefoot Farmer, and there's a guy out in Christmas, and they just have, like a half acre or something, and they just grow one or two things, and then they show up at a farmer's market with just a table of stuff, and they would sell it, and it kind of, so you have to know what market you're at, and then you have to know the guy behind the counter, right? And so talk to him.
Ask the actual people selling the beef or the shrimp or the chicken or the eggs or whatever. Tell me about your farm and tell me where it's at and let me come visit.
Yes, and I'll tell you exactly why. We had a lady that came to my Lake Mary farmer's market one day, and she's like, man, I love you. Now, at this point, we had dropped Lake Eola because we have to produce or we don't have anything, right? So we're only doing Lake Mary farmer's market at our store. And the lady's like, man, I love you, but I can't drive to Lake Mary every Saturday. I wish I could get you here, here, and here. And I was like, yeah, I just don't have time. She's like, well, my other farmer, and she starts naming. He's at Thornton Park and College Park and Winter Park and Castleberry and this place. She names like 6 farmers markets, and there's only 7 days in a week. So I looked at her and I said, do me a favor. The next time you see him, ask him who's growing the food. And she froze. She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm a farmer. I cannot be at 7 farmers markets a week and grow the food. So if he's at 7 farmers markets a week, he ain't growing the food. Find out who's growing the food. And she comes back like 2 weeks later. She's like, yeah, he was buying everything.
Oh.
I said, well, that's why he's at 7 farmers markets, because he's not a farmer. You know what I mean? So there's telltale signs if you are willing to put in the sweat equity. And you don't have to be, a ding-dong. You don't have to be rude to the guy. But you can ask certain questions and do your due diligence. And real quick, you can ask questions and figure out, And one way to know is if it's 110 degrees and he's telling you he's growing the romaine and the kale, he's not. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or if it's 32 degrees outside, we had a cold front, and he's got vine red tomatoes, he's not. Right? So you have to understand your crops, understand your seasons, and know the right questions to ask when you're shopping.
Okay, I want to switch gears for a minute. Tell me about the controversy with raw milk. What is wrong with raw milk from a dang cow?
There's no money in healing. It's just like natural immunity with some current like COVID. So raw milk is unregulated. The USDA says because, yes, in every digestive system, there's good and bad bacteria. So they say we can't put our stamp on anything that could be harmful bacteria, even though it's not harmful to humans. So they won't stamp it. They won't make it approved for human consumption. So because they can't make money on it, they can't regulate it, they can't inspect it, then you can't sell it. You get locked up for it, get a fine.
Okay, so this is from the cow in the little container, milk,
right,
direct, that's not been homogenized or pasteurized.
Right. And so people understand pasteurization. That's just like heating, to a boiler point, and you cook off stuff. So my grandma always put a pot on the back of the stove, just at a very low temperature, and that's the milk that would then be skimmed off, and you'd get you had your cheesecloth, and you get your buttermilk and other stuff, and then the finished product is what you would drink, and nobody died. But again, there's no money in that, right? So they have to have something they can regulate and inspect and have a job, and then force you to buy that product because they make it illegal to buy the other product.
And my understanding is, inside of raw milk, there are nutrients that we cannot get anywhere else that heals our gut, correct?
Yes, there are. Yes, ma'am, there are. There's bacteria, and you need a certain amount of bacteria. And I'm not a doctor, I'm a farmer, but I do know you need a certain amount of good bacteria to have good gut control, gut flow, and an immune system, and I don't know the right scientific way it works. I just know it works because, I was raised that way.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know the definition of what works. But I will tell you this. For us, at Organic Meats, people come in all the time, and I refer them to Horsemeyer over in Sanford because they are a feed store. So then when the inspectors are slick, right? When they come into my place, they see 99% food, and then they see the section over here that says not for human consumption. They immediately know I'm lying, and they write me a ticket for it and make me throw it all away. If they walk into Horsemeyer, which is a feed store, and they have raw milk and mason jar that says not for human consumption, they can get away with it. It's more plausible. Now, they don't ask you what you do with it because by law they can't. So there are places that you can go get it at. You just have to find the right stores.
Yeah. So I think for the audience to be clear, the reason why I asked that question is because when I deal with people with gut health problems, there have been numerous studies conducted about the use of raw milk to produce the proper good bacteria in the body that helps support a healthy immune system from a gut health standpoint. And what happened 20 years ago in my world, we had people asking where they could get raw milk, and I didn't have a raw milk source here in the area at the time. So we had friends and family members that would drive up to the Panhandle and go to a farm there and get milk and bring it in a refrigerated truck out here, and then we would sell it out of the old office. And we were being told horror stories from the Weston Price Foundation people about the fact that there were people in California that had stores with organic food and raw milk, and they had it labeled, you buy it for animal consumption because animals can have this raw milk and it helps them grow and thrive. But whatever you do with it on your own, if you drink it on your own, that's up to you. And they had raids from all kinds of different authorities, taking milk and dumping it in the streets and handcuffing people on the pavement and dragging them off to jail because they were selling raw milk.
Right.
And that blew my mind. I had no idea that there was such controversy. Even more so, people, if you walk it across state lines, major issues.
Yeah, you can't transport, yes.
Yeah. Are there other products that are like that in the food industry that you can't bring across state lines, or things that as controversial as that?
I wouldn't say as controversial, but you're not allowed to take citrus in and out of Florida, because of the different canker and the greens and different things and diseases. And that's why we have, university ag extensions to protect the states and the crops, because there's different things out in California that we don't have in Florida. There's different things in Florida that they don't have out in California, or Yukon, or Oregon, or wherever. So some of that is understandable, but not at the rate. Like, here's something crazy. If I order chicken from a hatchery, they can be shipped from South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia to my farm in Lake Mary. If I drive to South Carolina and buy chickens from a hatchery, I can't bring them across the state line because I'm not legal and authorized to transport chickens. But I can bring cows, pigs, lambs. So it all goes back to the money train.
I was just getting ready to say, yeah.
Yeah, they have to have ways to control and make money and have budgets. So they come up with these ideas. Like, I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want them to stop it. But the newest, stupidest rule for USDA is now, and it's a good rule, guys like me can raise 20,000 chickens a year without federal inspection. Where 2 years ago, from 2 years ago past, you could not sell a chicken if it was not inspected. The closest inspection place for chickens are in South Carolina. So for a Florida farmer to raise 300, 400, 500 chickens a week, had to drive them to South Carolina, to drive them back. You got more of that than you got the chicken. So now you have places, and people know them, they've been to places where like, yeah, I got a whole chicken for $25. And people are like, what, $25 for a whole chicken? Well, I got 12 and driving it, I got 12 and raising it, and I'm not making any money. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm just trying to get into the chicken business. So whatever made them to do that it's great. Like, I'm glad because now we have an opportunity to go back to growing meat chickens here instead of buying them out of Georgia. We can grow them here and harvest them and sell them back to the public. We don't sell 20,000 a year. We don't get close to that. But they come up with these stupid rules that don't make sense, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just a way to make money, to have an inspector and to justify a payroll.
I get it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. So with some of the controversial things going on right now in the media about other people from other nations buying up farmland in the United States, and the Bill and Linda Gates Foundation or Bill Gates individually buying up farmland specifically, is there an actual agenda, or how do small farmers like you, what do you look at it as? What is really happening from your perspective?
I've been telling people for the last couple of weeks, just because you're blind, don't call me crazy. So when you have a guy who owns the largest part of the investment dollar in fake meat, fake protein, also buying up strategically grazing land. He's not buying up, I think he bought up like one potato farm. But other than that, he's not buying corn farms and onion farms and green bean farms. He's buying grazing land, all right, where cows graze. Without grazing land, you can't raise cows, okay? Because even though the commodity cows goes to a feedlot, before it can get to a feedlot, it's got to have 5 or 6 months walking around eating something, right? So the fact that he's buying up all this land at the same time, he's really marketing, fake meat, fake protein, and he's really applying for American Trade Act. What's the name of that company? It's part of the trade something with America. In order to buy, he wants to buy half of the largest seed producer in America, right? Producer's Pride. So he's trying to buy into that. So it's not by accident. He's a very smart man. He's also on record to say we need to reduce the population of the world by a third, right?
Yeah, he and his father, my understanding is he and his father have a very strong sentiment about the thought that the population is out of control, and that in order to right the balance of the world, that people have to go. And there are other people on the other side of that coin that say that's absolutely not true, that stance is incorrect, that Mother Nature corrects herself, and there doesn't need to be any kind of manipulation of anything.
No, because if I offend people, sometimes I care and sometimes I don't care. But try to be more sensitive as I'm getting older. I don't believe that the God who created this world, one, wasn't smart enough to know we're going to have this many people, and two, that we were never going to run out of oil. So I don't buy into the fact that we're going to run out of oil and we're going to kill the planet, because oil has been around since Genesis. And one of the first commandments God gave after the Garden of Eden was go, prosper and multiply. He didn't say multiply to 1 million, then stop. I didn't make the earth big enough, right? So it's very demonic, and you have to understand that to grasp it, because people say, oh, you're crazy. But if you realize the spiritual warfare behind America and food and health and everything, like medicine, doctors go to school to practice medicine. They don't go to school to practice health or healing. It's in the name. They practice medicine. They don't practice health or healing. People like you practice health and healing. Doctors make money on keeping people sick and keeping people on medicine, right? Bill Gates wants to reduce the population. So God's plan is creation. The devil's plan is stock creation, right? It's demonic. So by him buying up all this land, who's going to stop him from sending out certified letters to the ranchers saying, hey, you no longer can renew your grazing rights? Because ranchers pay for grazing rights on big farms. And they'll have 1,000 cows out rolling. And there'll be a couple cowboys on horses, like what you see in the old movies. That still happens up in Dakota and places out in Oklahoma and out in Wisconsin. There's still cowboys that ride horses and follow cows around.
Oh, yeah.
You know, during the spring, just grazing. So what happens when Bill Gates says, hey, I've owned this land now. Here's your certified letter. You can't bring your cows on my property anymore. Well, there's no grass. Cows start starving. Ranchers can't feed them. They have to sell them off. Now, meat's so expensive, normal people can't buy it. But wait, there's an alternative. Look, fake meat right here for $4 to feed your family. People are going to not starve. They're going to buy fake meat. And then at some point, if it works for him, unless you're buying on a very small scale from a local farmer, you're not going to have rows and rows and rows of steaks and roast and chickens at your local grocery store. Because it just won't exist anymore.
Right.
To me, that is, I can see it clear as day.
And
people say, man, you're crazy, but I feel it 100%. It's clear as day. It's an agenda.
Do you think that also is what is going on with people from other countries trying to buy up land? My understanding, I have a client that came to see me, and he told me that his family has a small farm in Alabama, and that they've been approached by multiple Asian investors, specifically Chinese investors, to come and buy up their land, and they're refusing to sell their land.
Good for them. Yeah, but it would blow the normal American's mind if they went around county to county, state to state, and pulled property appraiser records to find out how much land the People's Republic of China actually owns in the United States of America. I'm not saying it's quite in a third yet, but they own a lot of our land. A lot of it. And we're also in debt to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
And we have a president who is funded by them in several different areas. So how do you stop it? You know what I mean?
Well,
I don't have that answer on a broad scale.
Yeah. And I think from a health perspective, that's my take on it, right? I want to know how to keep my patient population healthy and have people understand the perspective of all the parties concerned. What is the real reason why something is happening in this form and fashion? I don't honestly even know what's in fake meat. I'm not a proponent of fake meat. I'm more a proponent of whole, real foods because of the way that I was trained. And it's kind of, it goes against every fiber of what I've been taught and what I know to be true about nutrition to impose someone having to eat something that is manufactured, altered, adjusted, however you want to phrase it, added antibiotics and so on. That's not necessary. But how do we, I think you said it before, we have to learn how to relate to our food, grow our own food, and have relationships with people in the community that make sense. That actually makes sense.
Yes. So, if you do like step 1, 2, 3, right? Just the basics, just to get people off the ground. Step 1, read a book, right? Learn your seasons. Know where you live, the zone you live in, and how it applies for your food and how to grow it. Number 2, learn how to grow something on a very small scale. So you don't waste a lot of your money killing something, right? Learn how to grow it, learn how to grow it properly. When you get good at zucchini, move on to squash. You get good at that, move on to something else, right? Understand the food you're growing and the seasons and how you're going to grow it. And then do your due diligence and meet a farmer in your area that's growing the way you want to eat and then support that farmer.
Right.
Because that's where the real change is, right? If you continue to go to Winn-Dixie, you continue to go to Publix, you continue to go to Whole Foods and all these places, they're going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the local guy's going to continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you'll have a guy that you used to buy from, and you go by his shop, he's like, oh, he's not there no more. Man, I love that guy. Well, you didn't love him enough, right? It's a call to action for your patients, for consumers, for people. If you want to stay in control of your food and your health and your family, you have to take the necessary action to make sure you're just not talking, you actually do it.
Right.
Right? And if you don't have the ability to grow and farm, then you have to put your money where your mouth is and make sure you're buying from somebody in your area that you know how they're growing, so you're living and eating good.
Yeah. So some last words as we wrap up. Do you think from 2007 until now, things have gotten better for the smaller farmer or worse for the smaller farmer?
Prior to COVID, it was getting better. But now we're at the most dangerous times of ever. Are going out of business. Even us. We barely covered our bills last month. January, we barely had enough money to open February. And we have a brick and mortar butcher shop. We have 3 or 4 different, places we farm. We do an outdoor market. But at the end of the day, when you get through, now I can cheat. I can start buying cheap feed and GMO feed, and I can start using growth hormones and antibiotics, and I'd be doing really good. But to do it right, that stuff costs so much money now. You know what I mean? There's no margins left.
Are you?
And people
you're not talking about COVID, like with things shutting down. Are you talking about a combination of the lockdown?
Prior to COVID, the margins we had. I used to go to hay farms in Georgia and buy hay for $35 a roll. Today, I buy hay for $105 a roll.
Whoa!
I have 3 pastures. I use a roll in every pasture every week.
Wow.
I spend $315 a week, which is $1,260 a month. That's more than those people house payment and insurance payment. I use this to buy hay. That's not counting the GMO free that I pay $600 a ton for. That before COVID, it was $295. So like commodity feed before COVID was like $140 a ton, right? Not a big deal. It's cheap. They grind a bunch of it. No big deal. Our feed was like $295, $305, which is okay because we know what we're getting. We got to get a very good product. Our feed now at the mill is $605 a ton. And if God forbid, I put more than $20 a pound on steak, people are like, oh my gosh, can't buy a steak for $20 a pound? Well, you're drinking a $9 gelato from Starbucks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You got to prioritize the food.
Yeah, and I try to educate people, get them to understand, And a lot of things, like one of the first things I teach people is go back to the Walmart where you used to and buy a pound of meat for $6.99 a pound, and then come buy a pound of meat for $8.99, and then go home and cook them both, and then weigh the edible product. Mine's still pretty much a pound. The one you buy at the Walmart is like a quarter pound, maybe a half pound. So that $6.99 turns into $13. My $8.99 stays at $8.99. So most farmers are higher on the front end, but what you put in your mouth, you're cheaper, and you don't have as many doctor visits or health concerns or health issues. So you spend more up front, but you save a lot more on the back end, and that's the most important end anyway. So getting people to open up their minds and understand that.
Yeah.
Again, it's conditioning. It's an agenda. You walk into any grocery store, and everybody's looking for BOGO, 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 BOGO. Wow. Just sell it at no price. Don't jack it up double and then sell a BOGO. Right? We don't do those gimmicks here. We just have normal prices,
Well, actually, I take that. No, that's not necessarily true. I've purchased plenty of meat at your place, and I know if I spend $150, I get a pound of sausage or I get a pork chop.
Right? oh yeah, cash. Yes, I can't. I'm never here on Saturday. So I gotta start. I'm always at the farmer's market, but you're right. We have a deal on Saturday. If you give us cash money, not a credit card, we give you something for free. Yes, you're right. Yes,
I gotta promote you,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
I really appreciate your time. Again, it's More Organic Meats, Lake Mary.
Yes.
And which farmers markets are you at so people know?
Only Lake Mary. I'm only in Lake Mary.
Okay. So
but I ship everywhere in the country.
You still take that little cooler out there and plug it in?
But if you text 407-402-5686, we're asking people to text right now, not call, because we're very short staffed with Amy being, under the weather and stuff. Text us your name and your number. We have a meat box, has about 11, 12 pounds of meat in it, and it's a variety box. You get a sample of everything. It's $159. We ship it out every month to your front door.
Okay.
So if you want to get good meat, no matter if you live in California, Virginia, no matter where you live, we'll ship anything you want to you.
Okay, got it. I appreciate you and your wife, and I'm glad she's feeling better. We'll talk soon.
All right, thank you.